with Diane Oxbury.
Our weather today will be broadly similar to the stuff we had over the weekend. So we're looking at sunny spells, we're looking at patchy cloud every now and then. And as the day progresses, the cloud will build in places, particularly around the Pennines. And there could be a couple of showers here and there. Where they do turn up, they could be heavy and sharp. Top temperature, 17 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. Allan Beswick with you for the next couple of hours. Telephone number 0161 228 2255. The email address radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. And of course you can text on 07786206951. The subject matter is yours for the choosing. I'll blather on about all sorts, because, well, that's what I do. It comes into me head, it comes out my mouth. Usually we're not much filtering, which is possibly not a wise idea, but I'm afraid that's what happens. If I think it, I say it. Nothing I can do about that. I wish there was sometimes. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, for example, I got the thought this morning that the fuel crisis, as it's being described, it's not much of a crisis, is it? I mean, nobody's been shot on a forecourt. There's not been any stabbing. It's not like as if, you know, there was somebody jumped the queue at a supermarket. Well, last week somebody jumped the queue at a supermarket and was knocked out and eventually died. So, in simple terms, they were beaten to death for all over the issue. I mean, apparently the bloke who was beaten to death wasn't even a queue jumper. So somebody was beaten to death over queue jumping. And that's for tins of beans and stuff. Well, there's loads of beans. I've been in supermarkets recently. There's loads of beans you can't move for beans and other comestibles. So it's balmy. And yet nobody's died on the forecourt. So, I'm sorry, it's nothing, the crisis. It's absolute nothing. It's a storm in a teacup. It's a load of garages playing a clever stroke. Because rather amazingly, what I have learned during the course of the past 48 hours, not yet to my cost, because I've not fuelled up yet, I've got to do that today. Or walk to work tomorrow, and that's not going to happen, I can tell you. So, no, it's nothing, there's no bother. No bother at all, but some garages have decided that, rather remarkably, they've run out of the lowest cost of fuel. Isn't that amazing? The higher cost, the stuff that makes your car go, well, actually, makes no bloody difference to your car whatsoever, but they pretend it does. They call it super unleaded. There's plenty of that. Oh, yeah, plenty of that. Oh, no problem at all. Well, cobblers, that's what I say. It's not a crisis. And if I needed any more evidence, all those whinging lorry drivers who were going to block the motorway. I was scheduled to go to the Lake District on Saturday, so I was here in me way till 9 o'clock. And then I went home and we had a discussion about whether we'd go or not, because I thought, you know, it was a last-minute decision going up there. I don't really have to go. I can blow out if I want. Or I can go the long way round on the A-something or other. What is it? The A65, is it? Goes through Clitheroe, for God's sake. I could do that. And I thought, well, that and had another 2 hours driving. Just to look at a few puddles, it's worthless. So I very nearly didn't go. And then we said, sod it, we'll go. And if it means we sit in a traffic jam, well, stuff it. There's good stuff on the radio. Yeah, I can read a book in a traffic jam, me, I'm not bothered. So, we went. Best journey I've ever had. Best journey I've ever had to Lake District. Never saw a lorry. I saw a load of idiots on the bridges with big banners saying, we support you and all that caper. And as I predicted on Saturday morning, the steam train anoraks were out. You know those Burks that chase steam trains all round the countryside so they can photograph them? Yeah, I know. Thick as workhouse butties, the lot of them. Anyway, they were out, because it's not often the motorway's full of lorries, they think. Have they not seen a Monday morning? They're always full of bloody lorries. Anyway, so all the idiots were out, all the anoraks and half-wits. I think flasked tea sold like a good 'un. And they were there, on the motorway bridges, with their bed sheets with writing on. That must be really uncomfortable when that paint dries. But bed sheets with writing on, saying, fuel's too expensive, or pay the lorry drivers more money, or we're with you lads, and all sorts of other crap patronising phrases. But I never saw any lorries. Motorway was deserted because of us. Radio Manchester 2020 travel every 3 times an hour. 3 times an hour we were telling you don't go on the M6 because it'll be knackered. So nobody went, and so it was brilliant for me. So slipping a tenner to the travel people really did the trick. Anyway, so they sorted. So that was rubbish. There was more traffic coming home. Much more traffic coming home last night, but I guess everybody came home at the same time. That's the way it is. But even that wasn't a problem. I know you don't care. I'm just pointing out. And when I spoke to people and said, "Did you see the lorries?" "No." "Why? What's going on?" I said, "Well, there's a big traffic jam on the motor." "Nah, never saw it. Never saw it at all. Never caused any problems at all." So there you are. So, lorry drivers. Yeah, can't make their minds up. Anyway, that's that. I got that out of the way, got it off my system. And as I say, no problem with petrol supplies. Otherwise, people would have been murdered over a gallon or two, wouldn't they? Because that's the way we are now. We've gone all American. Brian sends this email. It's about educational standards, so I'll have to read it carefully. And that in itself would be a first. I was watching the 6 p.m. news on BBC One on Friday, and there was a piece from Colchester concerning the recent deaths of 5 soldiers in Afghanistan. At the end of the item, the camera showed the many flowers laid in tribute outside the barracks of the regiment concerned, and it then focused in on a handwritten letter placed with the flowers. Below, I reproduce exactly just what one section, but a representative section nonetheless, of what was written. "Always gonna have a place in our hearts, lad, name. You were a grand laugh. We had such a laugh together, year and a half. I'll never forget the night I met you." That's what it said. Now, always is 2 words, A-double-L, W-A-Y-S, always. So that's always, every method possible, rather than always, meaning in perpetuity. Gonna, which is G-O-N-N-A. He's just reproducing it. Gonna, so going to, yeah. Have a place in our hearts, name. You were a grand laugh, L-A-F. We had such a laugh, number 2, together. Year and a half, ill, because there's no capital I, so it's ill, never, N-E-V-A, figget, F-I-G-E-T, never, again, in the same way, forget, yeah, which is F-E-G-E-T, the night I, small case, met you. Brian says, now I have no idea of the age of the writer, but I would hazard a guess at a young person around the age of 18 to 20, similar to that of the deceased men. This then, 11 years on, after New Labour's declared 3 priorities of education, education, education. If this is in any way representative of the educational standards of some of our young people, then how on earth can they be even remotely qualified for employment in any capacity necessitating the use of the written language? As you would no doubt would say, Alan. Good God. Well, I don't think, in those terms at least, I don't think the educational standard is demonstrated to be poor there. I think the individual who wrote that is one of 2 things, either poorly educated or indeed was using text speak to convey their message, which is fine. But the great problem with modern society is we don't really have any work suitable for the thickos. We don't. Oh, come on, don't be giving me that crap. Of course the world's populated in the main by thickos, but we don't have any work for them. There isn't work anymore. You know, how many dustbin men do we need? Now, I'm not suggesting that all dustbin men are thickos, but you don't have to be clever to do it, do you? In fact, from what we've been reading lately, you don't have to be strong either. But there isn't manual work for thickos. When you want to break a hole in the road, you get a pneumatic drill and all sorts of other machinery. So there's nothing for the thickos to do. I'm a great respecter of miners. I think the kind of work that miners did was extraordinary, but you didn't have to be clever to wear pads on your knees and spend 8 hours underground with a pickaxe in your hand, racking it against the wall so that lumps of it fell off so that another thicko could put it in a barrow and shove it until the donkey got it. Sometimes in the mines, the donkey was the cleverest bloke. So that's just how it is. I'm not criticising, that's just how it is. And we don't have any work for them. We just don't. So what we end up with is people working in jobs that require a modicum of education. And notice I didn't say intelligence. A modicum of education. And we have them working in those jobs when, frankly, they wouldn't have held those jobs years ago. So it isn't that the education standard is lower. It's the requirements of employment that require a higher education standard. And frankly, I think it's unfortunate that the reality is that many people are not able to learn reading, writing, arithmetic to the standard that's required. Now, that doesn't mean they're thick. It just means that their skills are elsewhere laid, should we say. It's true. This idea of labours, and frankly it's balmy, this idea of labours that 50% of people should go to university merely means that university turns into college and is crap.
Heather Stott. Not so much lifestyle, more real life.
Putting your sexuality to one side, just talking about two women raising a baby, do you think your daughter has suffered at all through not having a man in her life as a role model?
Of course I'm going to say no, I don't think she has. I mean, I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old daughter who's extremely confident. She's an A-class student. It's about having the right mix of people around you, and there are always going to be men in that mixture. We don't live on a planet full of women.
Heather Stott. Tomorrow morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
What do you think of gay people raising kids? I mean, if they're not prepared to do the dual sex bed wrestling, why should they have brats? It's a fair question. Alan in Radcliffe. Hiya, Alan.
Hi, Alan. All right.
Not bad. What have you got?
This fuel crisis and the wagon drivers holding the protests, and they're pretty much targeting Gordon Brown and saying, bring the fuel duty down, bring the tax down. So I'd like somebody to sort of look at all the other ways that we can bring the prices down. People are saying you can save fuel by driving with your windows closed and keeping your tyre pressures up and all this. And it comes down to demand, doesn't it? If we've got like the high demand for petrol, the speculators sort of jump on the bandwagon, and all these speculators, rich people, cashing on the crisis, and the poor people suffer, so to speak. So what I'm trying to say is, well, the other thing I saw this morning on the telly was that the parents of that young lad that got beaten to death outside the bakery in London, right? You remember that? Jimmy something or other.
Yeah.
And it came out and they're saying, something good can come of this. We can identify that there's a lack of respect in Britain, and you can see that pretty much wherever you go. You've got the violence, the vandalism, the drunkenness, the schools, you've got the bullies, teachers are being bullied, intimidated. But, from my point of view, I see the lack of respect is on the road. Now, I've ridden the bike for the best part of my life, and now with the fuel shortage, I'm thankful I've got the fitness that I can ride the bike. The fitness aspect is not a problem. The problem is that the vast majority of drivers that pass you on a bicycle, or pass you when you're on a bicycle, pass you too fast and pass you too close. Now, for people who are regular cyclists, they've learned to cope with that, but there's got to be millions of people out there that won't ride a bike, and I've had people say, you won't get me on a bike, and I say, I don't blame you. I won't advise you to get on a bike. I said, the way things are, I said, there's people out there to kill you. Just as somebody's, if you jump the queue in a supermarket, you're going to get your brains bashed in.
Well, it would appear so. Alan, we don't have a lot of time, obviously. Right. You seem to be talking about respect for each other in our society.
Respect for each other, respect for the rules. You get the people to stop breaking speed limits. While you were up in Windermere, driving to Windermere, I was over in Doncaster, and I drove back from Doncaster. I was trying to conserve fuel, but I was also respecting the rules of the road. I was driving between 65 and 70, and all the time There were these cars coming past. They could have been sports cars. There'd be 4x4s.
How do we alter the current status? So I think many people would agree that we as a society are less likely to obey the rules. I don't mean the big ones, I mean the small ones. We're less likely to be respectful to our fellow humans. How do we change that, in your view? Is there something that can be done?
What I'd like to see, if the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and the rich have got money to burn, like, you know, take your likes of your Wayne Rooney is spent...
Yeah, I am to a lot of times.
Right. So if you fine the rich people, or fine people for speeding or any other offence, and fine them according to their income,
right.
So the guy that gets pulled, at, say, who's on £120 a week gets fined £60, which is half of his income. The guy that's on 120 grand a week gets fined £60, which is half of his income. Now, whether it's for dropping chewing gum, if it's Alex Ferguson dropping chewing gum, or it's Wayne Rooney or whoever, the guy...
So fines should be a proportion of income. So instead of it being a fixed fine of £60 or whatever,
right.
it should be a percentage of income.
And
so
I'm pretty sure if you check it out, I've been told that's what happens in Switzerland. There's a millionaire businessman got fined £180,000 for breaking the speed limit.
Well, I don't know how he did that. He must have been coming downhill in Switzerland, mustn't he?
Well, you wouldn't have had that situation where you had your Plymouth goalkeeper driving down the motorway.
I'm going to have to stop you there, because that case is up before the courts at some point in the not-too-distant future, but people have been charged in that case and render it thus, as far as discussing it. I think it's on the edge of sub judice. In fact, I think it is sub judice, but either way, we're not going to discuss it because somebody's been charged. Alan, good to hear from you. Alan says that punishments, fines particularly, should be not straightforward fixed fines per person, per offence, but actually graded fines, graduated fines, in accordance with your wealth, in accordance with your income.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
The UK sending more troops to Afghanistan. Gordon Brown made the announcement during a joint news conference with George Bush earlier today. A man's been charged in connection with the shooting of a teenage girl in Manchester. Sophie Finucane is in a critical condition in hospital after being shot in the head on Saturday morning in West Gorton. And talks are taking place to try to resolve the dispute that's led to a shortage of fuel on some forecourts. Manchester's weather, some showers, sunny spells too, top temperatures of about 17 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Taking a look to the M6 traffic moving well between junction 26, the Oral interchange, all the way down towards junction 18 at Middlewich. That whole stretch moving at a nice steady speed, and no reported problems on the M60 or the M62, and the M67 moving fairly well too. Don't forget, if you can update me though, get in touch hands-free 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest traffic through the day.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Aye, all right. I've been talking about jobs that thickos could do. Anonymous, one wonders why. Anonymous says, what about your job? A thicko could do that. Indeed, but whoever you are, Anonymous, what about your job? A thicko does do that. 0161 228 2255. If you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome. Not able to read or write? You must be joking. Most of them can't use a knife and fork properly. One of my favourite pastimes is watching people eat, says Kevin. It's like feeding time at the zoo in some restaurants. Yeah, I mean, there is a lack of table manners in our society, possibly because people no longer eat with knives and forks, but with their hands, because it's all hand food, isn't it? Burgers and all that kind of horrible stuff. But there you go. But there is a story in the Express today about exactly that. Hang on a minute. And it's about posh restaurants. And it's a bit snobby, really, this story. In fact, it's a lot snobby. Because it says that people are no longer able to... Well, I don't know whether able's the right word, or no longer able, but people... More and more people in posh restaurants don't understand the wines, for example. They don't understand what knives and forks... And gourmet gaffs. They've got a list in the Daily Express of gourmet gaffs. 18% of people I don't know what these figures mean. It doesn't, in the end, matter. It's just a talking point. But 18% of people have ordered the house wine to avoid selecting a wine from the list. Now, that may be so, it may be not. And it doesn't matter. But frankly, I know people who actually know about wine and almost always in a restaurant choose the house wine because it's a good way of assessing whether the restaurant knows about wine or not. And also, the house wine is usually a lower price than any on the wine list. Why wouldn't it be? They're trying to get you to sup that, or they're trying to provide you. But, it really is unacceptable to criticise people for booking the house wine. They're entitled to choose what they like. 10% have bluffed their way through a menu they didn't fully understand. Now, again, frankly, I think half the chefs are not chefs for a start. I think most of them are just kooks that have read a book. Half the stuff they put together, they've made it up. You can't understand it because it's been invented. And restaurants that put their menu exclusively in French are as useful to you and me as anyone else. But most menus contain a lie. Most menus are not true. I'll tell you what I mean. You go along and you order a particular meal. Say you order a fish dish. So often when you order a fish dish, it comes back and there's a couple of prawns lying dead on the surface of the fish because they think that's pretty. Which is all very well, unless you happen to be allergic to seafood, and then the whole dish is gone. So the menu not only speaks in a language that even those who write it don't understand, it doesn't give you all the information you need. So I think it's a bit harsh to criticise members of the public who can't work their way through. 8% have used the wrong cutlery. No, they haven't. There isn't wrong cutlery. There's just cutlery. You use it. I mean, if you're trying to eat your soup with a fork, you're a bit of a gink, aren't you? You're not so bright there. But I don't think that's what they mean. I think they mean, he's using the wrong knife. Well, there isn't a wrong knife. It's just a thing for cutting with. It's nonsense. 8% have used the wrong cut. 6% have ordered an expensive bottle of wine so that they don't appear tight with their money. Well, we all know about show-offs. We all know about them. They're just show-offs. There's nothing wrong with them. They just happen to be show-off. And 5% have eaten things on their plate that were inedible. Now, that one really gets me. Why is it on the plate? I'm in a restaurant, right? I know the plate and the dish. I know that you don't eat them. I know that you don't eat the knife and fork. But if the fella in the stupid tall hat and the white clothes, and usually a dirty apron, if he's put it on the plate, I should be bloody well entitled to eat it. Shouldn't I? Why should... I don't want my plate full of crap that I can't eat. I'm in a restaurant. I've come for food. I haven't come to look at little pots and little dishes and nice little presentations that I can't eat. I've come to eat. So what's on my plate should be food. The trouble with restaurants in this country, and it is this country, it's not the same everywhere. The trouble with restaurants in this country, they're run by people who've got fewer culinary skills than they ought to have, and they hide behind pretension. They do. They hide behind pretension. So instead of getting really good food, half the time in restaurants, you're getting crap dressed up as good food by a liar in a tall hat. But they impose themselves upon you in such a way as to make it so you don't feel eligible to complain. Well, fine. But let's give them a taste of their own. Let's simply say, right, take that back. It's crap. I don't want it. So take it away. Let's, when we've finished our meal, if we don't think it was up to standard, pay less. Say, all right, so you want 50 quid for that. It's not worth 50 quid. I'll give you 30, and if you want the rest, sue me. They'll call the cops, because they know nothing either. The idiot cops will come, and when the police arrive, say, this is a civil matter. They will then attempt to arrest you for causing a disturbance. In other words, they will protect the rich and let the ripped off carry on being ripped off. But that's why they're coppers, isn't it? so they can go and do work like that. It isn't so they can go out and stop people getting stabbed in the street. David in Gorton says, good morning, Alan. Queue jumping at filling stations may not cause murder. But I did feel like murdering a motorist in front of me when he slows behind a car stopped at a red light and then zoomed up to the red light. Then I thought to follow him would necessitate my jumping the light and the possible points on my licence, so I decided not to do so. Hang on, I don't understand that. I felt like Modric in front of me when he slowed behind a car, stopped at a red light, and then zoomed up to the red light. Then I thought to follow him would necessitate my jumping the light and the possible points on my licence, and decided not to do so. Why did he? And I don't understand that. So the lights are on red, and he slowed down, and you slowed down, and then he went fast, and you thought, oh, I must go fast. I don't understand that. I really don't. You drive according... I appreciate if he slows down, you have to, or run in the back of him, but how is that a problem? If it's a problem, you were too close. Surely. Maybe it's just me. Christopher, I was watching the national news about the petrol shortage, and they had a bit of film shot outside a petrol station with the printed sign stuck on the pump stating, sorry, no petrol. Sorry was spelt S-O-R-R-E-Y. Could it have been filmed in Colchester, I wonder? Sorry, you'll have to think about that. Get an atlas. No, get an atlas. Cyclists, drivers never go too close because you can never catch them as they go through the traffic lights whilst on red or just nip onto the pavement. Terry from Tilsley criticising the lad who was on about cyclists getting a raw deal off motorists. Not as raw as the deal they hand down to pedestrians. I thought it was against the law to ride a bicycle on the road. I did. I thought they'd changed all the laws. You never see them on there then. I'm beginning to take great offence at all these comments about the intelligence of people from Colchester. Can't think why. Are you from Colchester by any chance? Was your dad in prison there? That's where the Army Nick is, isn't it? Exactly. So there you are. So whoever that is whinging is obviously whinging, but then it doesn't matter because he's the descendant of a criminal soldier. 0161228 2255. Keith Hallam has sent me an advertisement for a thong, I think. But I can't... I hesitate to say this, but I can't open it. I don't... It's just an advertisement for a thong. Just a thong at twilight. I don't want to dwell on this because it's not really my province, but it's more your Becky wants. I'm not suggesting that she does or indeed does not wear a thong. I'm not educated on that area, and frankly I've no desire to find out. But she's our shopping correspondent, and for the life of me, I cannot think why anybody, whatever their gender, wears a thong. They're weird. They're just sort of... Isn't it just a triangle with a bit at the back to stick up your bum crack? I can't imagine why anyone would want that. Anyway. Oh, hang on. David Gordon says it should have read through the red light. I don't think that... I don't think, David, that improves your email at all. I'm not going to read it again because, well, you can have too much happiness in your life, can't you? But I'm still with the idea that if a driver goes through a red light, there's no obligation on the one behind him to follow him. Maybe I'm missing the point. Wouldn't be for the first time. Now, I don't know how to deal with this other than to read it out and leave it up to you. But this is Jackie in Cork in Ireland. And she says, Alan, I don't suppose that you could explain the Lisbon Treaty, could you? Everyone voted no here in Ireland because nobody really understood it. I'll tune in Monday for an explanation. Thank you. Well, I don't know what the Lisbon Treaty says, because for a start, it's a huge document. But I've got a very good idea of the principle, no, perhaps not the principle, but the most dramatic change that the Lisbon Treaty rather like the new constitution that preceded it, unsuccessfully. And I think the principal change that the European leaders want to get through is as a result of the increase in size of the European Union. The European Union, when it kicked off, was 6 countries, and they wrote the rules. And one of the rules they wrote, because they were all fairly substantial countries, one of the rules they wrote was that the constitution, the rules, couldn't change unless they all agreed. So they've got a constitution which sets down all sorts of things. One thing is that any country can veto any major change. Now, when you've got 6 countries, it's very easy for the other 5 to negotiate and talk and huddle and sit round the table and thrash out something somewhat dilute of the principle of those who want to change dramatically, but could dilute it to a way that everybody could accept, that there were only 6 countries. There are now 27. And any change in major European legislation, not just the treaty itself, not just the constitution itself, but any change in major European legislation requires that every one of the 27 countries agrees it. So the Lisbon Treaty was to change that principle so that it wouldn't need every country to make a decision or to support a decision to bring about change. But of course, before they can get to that, they've got to get that through the system. Now, different countries have different ways of doing it. In Britain, we're going to do it via a parliamentary majority. Now, I know the Tories say there should be a referendum, like they had in Ireland, but the government believes there's no need because it's not a major change. That's fine. That's an argument of party politics that I have little interest in. But the explanation of what's upsetting people on the Lisbon Treaty is that if the Lisbon Treaty was agreed by all the countries and was then implemented, the small countries would no longer be able to veto major change. It would be left to the big countries, the original 6, if you like, or add Britain, and maybe the 9 comparatively big ones. And it would be less unwieldy, it would be more efficient, but it would mean that the likes of the small countries would lose their veto and therefore their power. And you could end up with legislation being imposed upon the small nations that, frankly, they do not want. So that's it, really. It's changing the rules so that everything that Europe decides has not necessarily to be... It isn't necessary for the change to be brought about, that there be a unanimous vote. So that's the principal change, and that's what's upsetting people. So it's a change in the constitution of the European Union, some say. Others say it's a change in the operational standards of the European Union. It's not for me to say which it is, but I think that's the thing that's getting on everybody's chest hairs. And, of course, countries like Ireland that give their population a referendum vote against it. The original change, of course, the original constitutional change, I think was voted against in Ireland. Sorry, not in Ireland. It was voted against by the French, and I think also by the Danes. But they're pretty funny about the European Union anyway. Kevin says, red faces on the forecourt this morning. A woman approached the driver of a white van parked at the pump who was sat reading his paper. She gave him an earful because she was waiting behind him in the queue. What she didn't realise was that his mate had just filled the tank and he was on his way to the kiosk to pay. I didn't quite catch his reply. Did the lady not notice that the fellow sat doing nothing was actually... the fellow sat doing nothing was actually sat in the passenger seat? Or was it a left-hand drive white van? Who can say? Steph in Old Trafford said, Alan, you were wrong about there being no jobs for the thickos. What about the noddy bobbies and our boys in blue? That's Steph in Old Trafford. That seems awfully harsh. You have to be quite clever to be a copper these days. It's not just a case of running round in strange clothing, is it? There's quite a lot they've got to know. Lewis in Bolton. Hi, Alan. I also think it's all pomp in restaurants. For example, the description on menus. Hand-picked strawberries. Well, what else do they get picked with? Feet? And they use the words finest and specially selected. But they're not going to use words like the worst or any old muck, are they? And what about pan-fried? Is that instead of being fried on the bonnet of a tank? Yeah, pan-fried. I don't know what that means either, other than possibly it was fried in a pan. Like you say, where else would... You'll be telling me next, eggs boiled in water. Hot water.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
The UK's commitment to Allied forces in Afghanistan is to increase. Gordon Brown made the announcement during a joint news conference with George Bush. A 19-year-old man's been charged in connection with the shooting of a teenage girl in Manchester at the weekend. And Cheshire's chief constables come out in support of proposals to ban sales of alcohol to under-21s. The plans, for the time being, are in Scotland. Manchester's weather, sunny spells, a few showers, temperatures of about 17 Celsius. I'm Mark Edmondson.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, all seems fairly quiet. It's been a fairly quiet afternoon on the whole. We're not doing too badly on the M60. The M66 coming down from Edenfield up on the A56 towards Junction 2 at Bury. Again, moving very well for the moment. And no identifiable problems on the M602 heading into Manchester from around about Junction 2 all the way in towards Mancunian Way on the A57M. Thankfully, everything moving around at a fairly steady speed for the time being. Now, if you're heading through the Tilsley area of Manchester, Lee Road westbound still closed whilst resurfacing work continues between Booths Hall Road and Stanfield Drive. So for the moment, traffic can only travel towards the Worsley roundabout. Don't forget though, if you can update me further, do get in touch hands-free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Steve Wilde.
Hello, good afternoon. Manchester United's quest for a third successive Premier League title begins at home to Newcastle on August the 16th. Meanwhile, Manchester City start their campaign at Aston Villa. Bolton take on one of the promoted clubs, whilst Wigan head to London. With news of next season's Premier League fixtures, here's Mark Elliott.
United's title credentials will get an early test as they face Liverpool and Chelsea away in the space of 8 days in September. Mark Hughes' first home game in charge of City will be a week after that opener at Villa against West Ham. Manchester's Big Two don't meet at Old Trafford until the second week in May, with the Eastlands derby scheduled for November the 29th. The Bolton boss, Gary Megson, faces a former club on the opening day as promoted Stoke visit the Reebok Stadium, while Wigan start at West Ham. The Premier League doesn't finish until May the 24th, with the FA Cup final being staged on May the 30th.
Well, Stockport's opening game back in League One is away at Huddersfield on August the 9th. With relegated Leicester the first visitors to Edgeley Park, Oldham start at home to Millwall. In League Two, the opening day's fixtures see Rochdale go to Grimsby, Bury host Brentford and Macclesfield visit Shrewsbury. And you can see the fixtures in full for all our local clubs by visiting our website bbc.co.uk/Manchester. Stockport are reported to have turned down a £250,000 offer for striker Liam Dickinson from Derby. He scored 21 goals as County were promoted last season. UEFA are having to replace the pitch in Basel in time for Thursday's quarter-final at Euro 2008 after a downpour threatened the game between Switzerland and Turkey last week. A decision was made to install new turf. At Euro 2008 later, Germany play Austria, needing a point to qualify from Group B. Austria must win in Vienna to stand any chance of progress. In Klagenfurt, Croatia, who are already through, face a Poland side that also has to win. Now, Wigan's rugby league players could find themselves having to work a little harder in training this week. Coach Brian Noble's been critical of them following the weekend defeat at Catalan.
To concede 45 points is not nice, but, you know, to score 36 as well, we've made it into a touch football competition and we need to be a whole lot better than that, we need to be a whole lot tougher than that. And in relation to that, we're going to have to get the old shoulder pads out and the bags, and, you know, we need to improve greatly on our defensive performance.
In rugby union, the Sale prop Andrew Sheridan will miss the second test between England and New Zealand on Saturday. He's suffering with an eye injury. And at the US Open Golf, it will be decided by an 18-hole playoff today. Tiger Woods, aiming for a 14th major, faces Rocco Mediate.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxford.
Eamon and Diane.
What is it with the pigeons nowadays, though? When I'm driving in the morning, they're always, pecking around in the road. In the past, they used to get right out your ways to flap off. Now they say to you, flap off.
Flap off.
Eamon and Diane and you.
They were quite happy for all these people to come down from Scotland, spend the money in Manchester, but it wasn't backed up by the police or anybody. There were no organisation as such. You always get a few wherever you go.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
It's the stuff of which dreams are made.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
Oh, yeah. 0161 228 2255. What do you think of the latest idea to curb public drunkenness? That's what it used to be called, isn't it? Public drunkenness. In that they're going to not allow anyone below the age of 21 to purchase alcohol from off sales. Now that means, just trying to think really. Yeah, it's not just the off license at the pub, it's the off license in the street. Supermarkets, hypermarkets, all those sorts of it. Even garages sell alcohol now, don't they, rather bizarrely. I first saw that in Australia and thought it was mad. Anyway, so you won't be allowed to purchase off sales, in other words, outside licensed premises. You won't be allowed to purchase alcohol outside licensed premises to take away. Now, if you're below the age of 21, whereas you can't do it at the moment legally if you're below the age of 18. It seems strange in that one of the things that's been pointed out is, for example, a soldier could come back from Afghanistan or Iraq or anywhere else they're facing trouble. He could come back with the intention of marrying his beloved, and he wouldn't be able to go and buy a pint. He wouldn't be able to go and get alcohol for the party. He'd have to send, well, a grown-up. Yes, I know you've got the Victoria Cross, but if you want booze, you're going to have to bring a grown-up with you. I'm 20 years of age. I've got the VC. I'm a corporal in the Paras. Yeah, you're still going to have to bring a grown-up. I'm very, very sorry. But that's how it is. It is bizarre. I don't know if there's another way of doing it, but there has to be, surely. The problem at the moment of underage drinking is high, but I don't think the people causing the trouble are just between the ages of 18 and 21. It isn't just those 3 years that people are causing the bother. I know, and some of the supermarkets do it already, don't they? You go in a supermarket, it's never affected me on account of being an old git, but there are signs on the checkout saying, don't be offended if you look under 21 and we ask you for ID to serve alcohol to you, to sell alcohol to you, because they're saying we get in trouble, we don't want to sell it to people who are less than the legal age, so if you look under 21... we're going to ask you for ID, and if you then prove that you're over 18, we'll serve you. But if that changes, imagine what the sign will have to say. Please don't be offended if you look under 25, if we ask you for identification when purchasing alcohol. And you'll be able to buy booze in the pub. You'll be able to go to the pub, go to the restaurant, go to the licensed premises, the nightclub or what have you, and get absolutely, I think the modern parlance is, off your face, and then presumably decant yourself into the street. What you won't be able to do is to buy the booze, take it outside and drink it in the street. I don't know whether that moves us any further forward. It just further complicates the equation, doesn't it? What do you think of this idea that they're not going to allow off sales, as they're called? They're not going to allow off sales to people below the age of 21. Do you think that's a step in the right direction? Do you think it's a balmy idea? 0161 228 2255. Richard in Bramall. Hiya.
Yes, good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
Just switched on, and your topic is something very relevant to our business. and the sale of alcohol to people of 18, I think, is perfectly okay. And we already operate most of the time a system where if they don't look 21, they are challenged. But I think the what does want addressing is the the proliferation of alcohol sales as it's displayed and pushed down the every corner in the supermarkets, on the local commercial radio stations, where there's an endless barrage of prices, ridiculously low prices, which just make it so accessible to people with limited means. But Scotland have got the right idea. There should be controlled areas where it's sold. It should not be made so widely available and appealing to the young people, and that is why they get in such states as they do.
How then would you regulate it? You first of all would increase the age at which people could purchase it, would you?
I think the age is adequate as it is.
So it's all right at 18, right?
Yes.
Now, what about the regulated areas? That would mean that alcohol, for example, wouldn't be allowed to be sold in, I pick it randomly, but the local newsagent.
If it's a designated sales area and the space on the premises for a specific area where the alcohol can be made available and sold under direct supervision, where people
I see. So it wouldn't be on general sale, right? Rather like in the supermarket where you can load it in your trolley, you get to the till. I mean, the supermarkets are actually, I think, amongst the better organisations in selling, in not selling to the underage. But anyway, so they would have to have a specific area that was staffed by what we'll call, if we may, the off-sales staff.
Yes, absolutely. In other words, if you go in most of the big supermarkets now, alcohol, as soon as you walk through the door, it's on every corner, on every aisle. It's everywhere, literally throughout the whole store, and that applies to all the big names. We won't mention any names, but if you go in any of them,
yes, I know.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, you're right in that, but there's no evidence. I mean, you may well be able to correct me, Richard, but I'm not aware of any evidence that selling alcohol in supermarkets ends up going down the neck of some 15-year-old lad who's going to cause havoc on the street.
Well, little bits of evidence which I think certainly relate to this is the amount, and you can then just look at the amount of, shall we say, trash that you see in roadsides, hedgebacks, all over, certainly in this area, littered with cans. And the cans that you see, the brands that you see, all relate to these big discount-priced alcohols.
But what you can't deduce from that...
And they've all been drunk outside. In other words, they've not been drunk in a house or in a garden. They're drunk in sort of all sorts of...
I understand what you're saying,
corners.
but what you can't deduce from that, and you will argue it's a reasonable conclusion, but what you can't deduce from that is that the people who drank it and then threw the can in the edge were under 18. You can't make that supposition. And frankly, nor can you make the supposition that that same can or bottle or what have you, it's nearly always a can these days, that same can wasn't purchased from somewhere other than the supermarket.
Well, after a few, you do tend to have a little bit of insight as to what people are going to do with what they've bought, and just observing people's habits, drinking habits, and what they ask for. I doubt whether they are people who are 21 who are behaving like this.
How would making the alcohol section in the supermarket, rather like we have the post office section in sub-post offices, or indeed the prescription drugs section in pharmacies, we would then, in your view, have an alcohol section in what we might call multi-type shops? So if it's a newsagent or a grocer's, there would have to be a bit. How would that prevent sales to those who would deal with it unsuitably?
Well, this situation has only occurred over the last 5 to 10 years. It's so widely available. As you mentioned, garages sell it. Unheard of at one time. A forecourt would have had no chance. Now they incorporate it in all these forecourt grocery convenience areas. Fair enough, they don't have a big selection, but it is everywhere. It is so readily available, too readily available, and it has really, to some extent, got out of hand. And as everybody says, it's a drug.
So you reckon the consequence of requiring it to be sold from specially designated counters would mean that fewer businesses would be interested in selling it?
Well, I'm sure it would.
Okay.
It needs to be made more difficult to get permission to purvey alcoholic beverages. And at the moment, it is so readily available, and it's well documented. There's a lot of people who are in the business who are distracted by selling other things: boiled ham, sausages, newspapers, sweets. And it is a specialist subject and should be treated in that way, not so randomly, casually. And as I say, the way it's advertised, certainly at bank holidays, I'll use your term, it does beg a belief how it hasn't been stopped. And as Scotland have got the right idea, their Parliament have decided to put an end to it, and I think it should be brought into line in south of the border.
Just one last question, a yes/no answer. You seem to be saying Scotland's got the right idea. What Scotland are doing is saying you can't buy it below the age of 21, and yet you also said that 18 was the right age. So which of those two?
No, they've addressed the
It was the restriction
available.
Other than the age one. Okay,
Yeah.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Jackie in St Helens, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, about your reasoning about the poor guy in the forces who came home and couldn't find a pint, etc.
They couldn't buy a pint and an off-licence, yes.
Well, they have to do it like they do in the States. A lot of things in the States are ruled by age, but also by being in the forces. I once passed, please note the word passed, a sex shop out in the desert, and it said, over 21s only or members of the armed forces.
All right.
So they do make a distinction between the people who are in the armed forces.
Oh, well, that's reasonable, isn't it, I suppose? So we could get round that. I don't know whether our government could write legislation that was clever enough, or whether our government's clever enough to write such legislation.
Yes.
But, yeah, fair enough.
But the other thing is...
I'm glad to see that the brothels and sex shops are available to the soldiers.
Yes, well, I thought that.
It would be awful, wouldn't it, if they weren't? And they'd never do any business at all.
But the other thing was that you were about children. Now, we have a playing field near us, and one of the local villages had a curfew on its kids. So the parents used to drive them to our field, about 5 miles, already loaded up with their plastic bags with cans and bottles, etc. And the parents dropped them off and then came and picked them up later on.
Well, that's extraordinary, but I do believe it, and I'll tell you why I believe it, because today I've heard a number of interviews and read a number of interviews with youngsters who say, yeah, we're not 18, but somebody always goes and buys it for us.
Well,
who?
We also pray for rain on a Saturday evening at our church because we have a car park which the council made us have, and it is, as you can imagine, a meeting place.
Yeah.
And on a Sunday morning, when one goes down in one's good clothes, like yesterday, we had to go out and brush the car park because it's full of cans and bottles, broken bottles, half-full cans of beer, etc., etc.
Extraordinary.
The thing being that the half-full, half of it's not drunk.
Now, that is a disgrace.
That's what I mean. If there was empty ones, it wouldn't be so bad, but you get half bottles of wine often piled up outside the front door.
Well, that's the Coronation Street drinking habit, isn't it? I've never seen anybody in a pub, when they get called away, leave their beer. The mobile phone goes. I've not been in a pub since mobile phones were invented, I'm convinced. But whenever I went in pubs, if anybody suddenly decided they were going to leave, they drank up and left.
Oh, yeah.
In Coronation Street in EastEnders, they just go and leave a bit of drink on the bar. I've never seen that in real life. But never mind, good to talk to you, Jackie.
Bye.
0161228 2255. Gary in Goulburn says, coppers? Intelligent? I think not. A partially trained chimp can point a speed gun at a moving vehicle. Ah, yes, but could it read the readout? Yeah. Big Normal, or is it Big Norman in Wigan? Anyway, Big Normal, he's probably happy with that, or she. Isn't it great that the fixtures are out today? Crikey. No, not crikey. Cricket. Crikey. Cricket. Golf. And that game of people charging at each other, mainly watched by young girls and men in replica shirts, all about to be put away soon. In other words, football's back. Who cares about the rest? Yeah, I know, it's absolutely disgraceful. And such a girls' game anyway. Hey-ho, at least it's not golf.
Join me, Becky Want, from 2 o'clock this afternoon at BBC Radio Manchester with Mr. Electric Avenue, Eddie Grant.
And Neil in Bevington said there's lots of jobs for thickos. Taxi driver. Oh dear, you tell them, I'm not. What other jobs are there for the thickos?
95.1 FM, DAB digital radio, and the World Wide Web. This is Manchester. BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, more British troops for Afghanistan, and Cheshire's top policeman says he'd like to see more restrictions on alcohol sales.
Manchester United begin their Premier League title defence at home to Newcastle.
The weather, a mixture of sunny spells and showers, highs of 17 Celsius.
And watch out for restrictions in the Carrington area of Greater Manchester. Temporary traffic lights still in operation on Carrington Lane both ways around Manor Avenue.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Edwardson. Gordon Brown's confirmed that Britain is sending extra troops to Afghanistan, bringing numbers there to their highest levels so far. Details will be announced by the Ministry of Defence this afternoon. The Prime Minister was speaking alongside President Bush after talks in Downing Street this morning. Mr Brown said it was in the British national interest to confront the Taliban in Afghanistan.
We will take action today that will freeze the overseas assets of the biggest bank in Iran, the Bank Melli. And second, action will start today for a new phase of sanctions on oil and gas. And I will repeat that we will take any necessary action so that Iran is aware of the choice it has to make to start to play its part as a full and respected member of the international community or face further isolation.
So both sides united on the issue of Iran, but President Bush rejected suggestions of differences with Mr Brown on the issue of British troop withdrawals in Iraq.
Gordon shares with me his plans. He listens, he talks to his commanders, then he picks up the phone and says, here's what we're thinking. So there's no surprises. And as I said yesterday on TV here, I have no problem with how Gordon Brown is dealing with Iraq. He's been a good partner.
A man's appeared in court charged in connection with the shooting of a 16-year-old girl in Manchester. Sophie Finucane is in a critical condition in hospital after being shot in the head at her home in West Gorton. This from Richard Stead.
19-year-old Wayne Bryan, who lives in Gorton, spoke only to confirm his name and address at Manchester City Magistrates Court. He's charged with possessing a magazine with bullets 3 days before the shooting. He's also charged with possessing ammunition and a firearm as well as wounding in relation to the shooting on Saturday. He was remanded in custody and is due to appear at Manchester Crown Court on September the 1st. There was no application for bail.
A professional footballer has reappeared in court over the deaths of 2 children from Partington in a motorway crash. The Plymouth Argyle goalkeeper Luke McCormick is accused of causing death by dangerous driving and drink driving. 8-year-old Ben Peake and his 10-year-old brother Aaron were both killed in the crash on the M6 in Staffordshire earlier this month. The case has been adjourned until September the 8th. Cheshire's Chief Constable has come out in support of proposals to ban sales of alcohol to under-21s in Scotland. He's been vocal on the issue of alcohol abuse since the murder of Gary Newlove in Warrington last year. Peter Fahey says he'd like to see similar plans in England. But the Chief Executive of Majestic Wines, Tim House, said that raising the age limit was not the best solution.
As an industry, we all have a responsibility to promote responsible drinking. And that said, I don't believe that increasing the minimum age to 21 is appropriate. There's no evidence that I'm aware of from any other parts of the world or Europe that that's a correct approach to encouraging young people to drink responsibly.
The Nationwide Building Society has increased some of its mortgage rates for the second time in a fortnight. The new fixed-rate deals and tracker mortgages are being offered at rates up by 0.5% higher. Nationwide says frequent changes are likely while markets remain volatile. And fresh talks are being held to try to end the strike by tanker drivers delivering for Shell, which began last Friday. Petrol and diesel supplies to hundreds of filling stations have been affected. Well, its maker insists it won't go soggy in the rain, so how do you fancy having a go on a cardboard bicycle? Well, it was designed by Phil Bridge, a 21-year-old student from Stockport, who says the idea behind it is to stop bike thefts.
It's worth nothing and it's not very glamorous. The idea is to promote the use of bikes in the city, and the main objective of using cardboard was to completely devalue the bike so that you could be given a bike for free because they're so cheap to produce and not worry about it being damaged or stolen.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Manchester United will begin their Premier League title defence at home to Newcastle on August the 16th. Mark Hughes' first match as Manchester City manager sees him visit Aston Villa, followed by a home game against West Ham. Bolton boss Gary Megson faces former club Stoke on the opening day at the Reebok Stadium, whilst Wigan go to West Ham. At Euro 2008, Germany play Austria this evening in Group B, needing a point to qualify for the quarter-finals. In Klagenfurt, Croatia, who are already through to the last 8, are likely to rest some players for their game against Poland. The pitch in Basel is being replaced in time for Thursday's quarter-final. UEFA made the decision to install new turf following last week's downpour between Switzerland and Turkey. And sale prop Andrew Sheridan will miss England's second test against New Zealand in Christchurch. He's suffering with an eye injury.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather.
Mainly dry with some sunshine for you this afternoon, though there will be the odd shower about 2. Expect temperatures to reach around 17 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
The Anglicans have got their knickers in a twist again. First of all, there's all this... Oh, knickers in a twist, very good. There's all this talk about female bishops. Yeah, they're talking about elevating women from the priesthood to bishopric. I know, it's an unfortunate name, but there you are. They are, yeah. And also, revelations about gay marriage between two clergy have caused further anxiety to Anglicans already facing an unsettled period, a senior Church of England figure admitted today. The Church is facing an unsettled moment in its life as it braces itself for a key debate on women bishops at the Lambeth Conference next month and the GAFCON Conference of Traditionalists in the Middle East. Oh dear, there you are. I always thought God would provide. Gerald in Crewe. Hiya, Gerald.
Hi, Alan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I just wanted a quick chat about a funny incident this morning on BBC television.
Good heavens.
It was at 6 o'clock news this morning, and they panned down to the front of the number 10 down Downing Street, and the commentator was talking about George Bush's visit to, and what was going to take place with Brown today. And just all of a sudden, the number 10 door opened at the back of it, the commentator, and a lady came out in a mop and a bucket, and she started to mop the step. And the guy carried on talking about what was going to happen with Brown and Bush, and the lady must have been tipped off that she was all of a sudden she's on television. So she started, obviously the step was all wet through, so she started mopping at high speed then to try and get the job done. And I thought it was quite funny that such a serious subject was being spoken about, and this was taking place at the back of the guy telling the tale, and it was just quite hilarious to see, really. And I've not heard much about it, but there you are. It's 6 o'clock news this morning on BBC.
Fabulous. People are at this very moment logging onto their computers to watch whatever it's called, the BBC replay thing.
Yeah, they did refer to when he went back to the studio, and the lady at the desk said what a good job she was making, made light of it. But I thought it was quite funny, really, because she obviously was tipped off at the back of the door that he's suddenly on television. She's probably going out there at 6 o'clock, not expecting anybody to be out there, really. Okay, Alan.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry I missed it. I was in the gym.
That's probably a bit early for you.
No, indeed. I was on my way to the gym.
Were you?
Oh, God, yes.
Saying no lie.
Actually, I lie. I wasn't on my way to the gym, but I was very nearly on my way to... I was getting ready to go. I get to the gym in time to swim at 6:30, so there.
Yeah. Well, it may be one of those cuts you see on the television from time to time.
There's every possibility it'll be back, yeah. Usually presented by someone whose career's failing. Cheers, have a good one. 0161 228 2255. A lady was cleaning the step, and quite right, too. Quite right, too. I think they should carnation it, the step of number 10. It'd go lovely with that black door, wouldn't it? Nice bit of red gloss. Fabulous it'd be. Alan, says Brian, I think the 21-year idea is an attempt to curb the sale of alcohol to young people of 15, 16, 17 years of age, many of whom enter off-licensed establishments and are unable to purchase alcohol because they look 18 years of age and over. A change to 21 years of age would help to prevent this, as few teenagers of the years 15, 16, 17 look over 21. Yes, those 18-year-olds and over will still go to pubs and clubs, and many will emerge drunk. But the idea, I think, is to try to stop younger people getting drunk at an early age, and it thus becoming automatically part of their social scene. So it's the old Jesuit principle in reverse, isn't it? It's, well, let us not get the children at that age drunk, because if we do, that will be their stall set out for good. Terry says, bin man. They can't read, as they always leave my bin at the wrong end of the street, even though it has a number written on it. Terry from Tilsley. So that's a job for a thicko. Yeah, I don't know whether my Uncle Walt's no longer with us, he's dead, but whether he'd be chuffed at that, I don't know. He also goes on to say, I read a story in the MEN this morning about this poor young girl who has a rare condition called extreme food phobia and will only eat chocolate. What a load of rubbish. Give her something else and she'll eat it by the time she's starving. I blame her parents for giving it to her from a young age, or for giving in to her from a young age. Indeed, an awful lot of these food extremes are learned rather than health, don't you think? People, we say it all the time, but parents, for some reason, parents seem to think that they have an obligation for their children to like them. Whenever, because I'm sure I went through the same process of saying to my parents, I don't love you anymore. And both my mother and father would say, well, yeah, fine, now do what you're told. Because, you know, the grown-up is supposed to, the adult in the relationship is supposed to be able to withstand the emotional slings and arrows turfed at you by the youngster, and the horrible threats, like, I'll leave home. I mean, who amongst us has not left home a number of times, usually before school age? You know, I'm leaving home. Well, I hope you to pack. Do have a safe journey. Would you like some money for the bus? Been through all of that. Never achieved anything at all.
Post Watershed Wit and Wisdom with Sam Walker.
I was on the front step. I was wearing the pair of tracky bottom when I was doing a bit of cementing on my front step, and I got chatted up by a passerby in my blooming holy tracky bum.
Sam Walker.
I just walked past and he sort of was very joking, went, oh, I hope you're getting paid to do that. And he was just very giggly and a bit silly. And then the other half came down, the BF came downstairs. He went, who are you talking to? And I said, a boy. And he went, yeah, well, stop it.
Sam Walker.
Well, I was quite excited.
Tonight from 10 at BBC Radio Manchester.
Aye, all right. It's a great story in the paper today. I like it. I don't know what I do. It's a bit weird, but I do like it. Oh, yes. It's the Sikh police officer. Now, we've got used to seeing people with a turban, you know, and we've stopped doing the jokes about, I hope your head's not too sore wearing that bandage. And we've done all that. We've got past that, which is great. We've got used to seeing people wearing turbans. I think they look rather smart. I wouldn't wear one. I wouldn't, because I don't wear hats. But they do. They look rather smart. And they're certainly a lot smarter than the turbans the women used to wear when they were in the factories. Do you remember them? When they sort of had a scarf on their head and they tied it from the back and then they looped it all in a big knot at the front. And it looked horrible, really. But there you are. That was fine. That was essential. As indeed is the turban for some. And so we've got used to seeing turbans all over the place, really. And we don't mind. Well, I don't. I think, as I say, I think they look rather stylish. But there is a problem with them. You can't get a crash helmet over the top of them for a start. So when they brought in the crash helmet legislation, people with turbans were excused. They said, well, you'll be all right. You've got a turban on you. It's already bandaged. It don't matter if you hurt it. Or words to that effect. And then we've got this. £100,000. This is in the Mail, so it must be true. £100,000 police search fails to find a turban-sized helmet. A police force, this is the West Midlands Police, a police force spent £100,000 on a failed attempt, but of course they didn't know it was going to fail when they started, to be honest, did they? They didn't know, obviously. They didn't. So, £100,000 on a failed attempt to find protective headgear that fits over Sikh officers' turbans. West Midlands Police started its search after one Sikh constable decided he wanted to join the Counter-Terrorist Operational Support Unit. The man, thought to be in his mid-20s, was refused a place because he was unable to fit the necessary helmet and respirator over his turban and beard, both of which are required for strict adherence to his faith. So he's got to wear a turban and he has to have a beard. But you can't wear... A gas mask don't work with a beard. It doesn't. It didn't in the army. They used to tell him, "Oh, no, we're not, you can't do that. No. You've got to shave, otherwise it won't get a seal and you'll die." So they shaved. Yeah, but not the Sikhs, obviously. I wasn't in the army with any Sikhs. We never had any Sikhs. We used to seek out the odd thing, but we never had any Sikhs. The man thought to be in his mid-20s. According to a police source, the unnamed constable claimed he was being discriminated against and was then assigned to the task, while on full pay, of sourcing new equipment that would fit. I know. Now, you know, I'm all in favour of a broad church, if you'll pardon the pun. I'm all in favour of that. I'm all in favour of society accommodating the different mores available. I'm even in favour, although 100,000 quid sounds like a lot of brass, I'm even in favour of public money being used to discover ways of facilitating this. As I say, £100,000 seems an awful lot to find a big suit big enough to accommodate the turban. I'm with that. But why did they get the copper to look? We've spent all this money training coppers to do whatever it is they're required to do, which is quite a broad requirement, really. And we've spent all that money, and then instead of him going out and having to interpret the law on the hoof, or going out there and having to prevent people from blowing us up, or going out there and preventing people from committing crimes, or even better, even more so, actually discovering those that did commit crimes, instead of him doing any of that, he's wandering around wholesale industrial clothing suppliers. Well, why did they get the Sikh to seek the equipment for himself? It makes no sense. They must have experts to do that. And so he ends up getting paid a copper's rate of pay to go shopping for the police. Ludicrous. Utterly ludicrous. Alan, this hypothetical para, or anyone of legal age, may be stuffed. Would an older person be breaking the law by buying it for them, as is the case now? Well, the answer would be dependent on the legislation, but if they prohibit the below 21 years of age individual from purchasing alcohol off licence, then they would simultaneously, I believe, prohibit it being bought for them off licence, rather like now. It's illegal. So if you see a bunch of scallies around the off-licence and you're going in there to get your own booze and they say, "Hey, mister, get us a few cans, will you?" My answer would be no, just because I wouldn't do it anyway. But there are those that do it, but it is against the law to buy alcohol in the stead of those who could not legally buy it is against the law, whether on or off licensed premises. So if the law was changed to say that those below 21 were not allowed to buy it off licence, then if you bought it on their behalf, you would indeed be committing an offence. So there. Lewis in Bolton, the Anglican Church should embrace these emancipations of the sexes, as it's only a matter of time when they note to embrace perverts and then everyone is catered for. Just a thought. Right, so he didn't say they should. The Anglican... Right, I think you mean should the Anglican Church embrace these emancipations of the sexes, it will be only a matter of time when they choose to embrace perverts. So there you are. All right, it depends on your definition of pervert, of course. Alcohol sales seems to change depending on the time of year. Take notice of the special offers when the weather gets warm, barbecues, etc., large sports events, and, of course, Christmas and New Year. Russ from Lee. Well, that is true, but one of the reasons there is so much booze available at extremely low prices at the moment in the supermarkets is because they ordered well in advance, I suspect, fully expecting there to be an awful lot of drinking going on during Europe 2008. But our own dear team is not in it, thank God in my view, but our own dear team is not in it, and therefore the ale is not being sold. Listen, football and booze go together. They shouldn't, but they do. Do you remember the World Cup when it was in far-flung lands? And we were having matches. Well, was it 4 years ago? Was it 8 years ago? We were having matches live on telly at, like, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know why I said like then. I think I'm turning into an 18-year-old American. But they would have matches at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I came into work, and there were actually grown men in the BBC bar drinking lager and watching football at 7 o'clock in the morning, presumably then going on to work. Now, I feel sure it wasn't only the BBC. So I just, oh, God... It doesn't matter what I'm watching on the telly. The prospect of watching it at that hour of the morning with a pint of booze, no, thank you very much. I'll manage without.
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
More British troops are to head out to Afghanistan, bringing numbers out there to their highest level yet. Details will be announced by the Ministry of Defence this afternoon. A 19-year-old man's appeared in court in connection with the shooting of a 16-year-old girl in Gorton at the weekend. The teenager's in a critical condition after being shot in the head. And fresh talks are being held to try and end the strike by tanker drivers delivering for Shell, which began last Friday. Your weather, sunny spells and showers today. Your high is 17 Celsius. I'm Alexia O'Connor.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
Just the usual roadworks in operation at the moment on the Sharston link on the 56. Narrow lanes and that speed limit of 40 miles per hour underway eastbound between 3 Bagley and 2 Sharston. If you're heading through the Tilsley area of Greater Manchester, Lee Road westbound still closed, whilst resurfacing work between Boots Hall Road and Stanfield Drive continue, so traffic for the moment can only travel towards the Worsley roundabout. In Carrington Lane, again, various restrictions still in force there, with temporary traffic lights, whilst gas maintenance work continues this hour around Manor Avenue. And in Salford, watch out for delays on the approach to the Bolton Road junction where it meets up with Queensway. Some improvement works are taking place now until later on next week. Don't forget, if you can update me, get in touch hands-free 0161 244 4951. I'm Carol Banks.
With more updates than the other guys, 2020 traffic.
Aye, all right. Good. 0161 228 2255. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. You were very helpful, and I'm grateful to you for it, honestly. No, I am. I know you don't believe me, and I don't blame you. But I am. All those people who said, carnation, you wouldn't put carnation on the step. It'd be slippy. Yes, and I'm prepared to concede that I did say carnation. What I meant, of course, was cardinal. The red polish, called cardinal because of cardinals, red robes and all that other gubbins. There you are. So I meant cardinal. So thank you for being ever watchful and helping me in this way. Shirley says, my friend says he used to enjoy a drink better when they had a lock-in after time in the pub. He said it tasted better. Personally, I think they should do away with all-day drinking. I do also think that a lot of parents provide the alcohol for their children. It's found that if it is found that that is the case, the parents should be punished. Well, yes, they should, Shirley. You're absolutely right, particularly if they're purchasing it for them to then go out and drink in the street. Tony, your alcohol sales to 21-year-olds. I'm no expert on age, Alan, but I see youths regularly purchasing booze and then queuing up to pay not at the normal line of tills, but the cigarette kiosk, where I've seen youths probably around 15 or 16 years old loaded with booze, where nods and winks are exchanged as they're served by their fifth form peers behind the counter. The cigarette kiosks are usually out of the way and close to the door in our supermarket. It's nearly always manned by a young person. In addition, the kiosk in our supermarket is very close to the exit and out of sight of the security station. That's Tony. It's rather like... I don't know how true this is, I never did discover whether it was true at all. But there was a lad who used to go to the same school as me, and his older brother worked in Woolworths, and he would go every Saturday morning, because it was a Saturday morning job, and he would go, this lad at our school, he would go to Woolworths on a Saturday morning. He would buy something on the counter that his brother was on that was really cheap, and then he would give him 2 bob, and his brother would give him change of £1 or £5 or whatever the exaggerated price was, but he would give him the wrong change, as it were, in his brother's favour, and then they'd split it later. Now, I don't know how true that was. I never did report it to the cops, and it wasn't me, I promise you. You have told the thicko bin men that I live in Tilsley. My bin will be bloody Atherton this time next week. Well, and you say you don't wear hats. Well, you've got ginger hair, so you should. That's Terry in Tilsley. Well, I haven't told them which house. I feel sure that they won't be able to single you out. Really? Or will they? And if they can, well, why do I care? I don't care where they put you up in. Actually, it won't matter very often, because there's a story in the paper today. It's actually on the front page of one newspaper, the Express. Not a lot of news about. New bins, not new, now bins to be, you see, they could have put a comma there, it would have helped. Now bins to be emptied once a month. Household dustbin collections will be cut to once a month, an industry expert warned last night. The move would be brought in as families are forced to recycle more waste. The plans were immediately condemned by campaigners who said leaving rubbish to fester for up to 4 weeks is a health hazard. Dorothy Cox, the founder of the Campaign for Weekly Waste Collection, CWWC, quack, she described any plan to move to monthly pickups as unbelievable. Well, if it's unbelievable, stop worrying. And Tory local government spokesperson Eric Pickles said, under Labour you pay more council tax and get less. Cuts to weekly bin collections have already boosted vermin. I like boosted vermin. No, they're much nicer than your ordinary vermin, aren't they? Oh, look, there's a boosted vermin. It means there's more of them, but never mind, boosted vermin. And during the summer, uncollected rubbish will pose a serious health risk. The industry expert predicted collections would be cut to just 12 a year, as in Germany. You see, we've worked that out for ourselves, that once a month is 12 a year. It's good of the Daily Express to take up their front page to do the calculation for us, but I think we'd worked it out. And it will be nice, instead of your bin being emptied on a Monday or a Thursday or whatever, it'll be emptied on the 19th. That's it. Or you may be one of those that gets the 16th, but it'll be the same date every month. So it'll be the 19th, the 16th, whatever. And that'll be nice, because it'll mean sometimes the poor beggars will have to empty a bin on a Sunday. I'm quite looking forward to that. From Colin in Bolton, I'm frequently asked if I'm over 21 when attempting to buy alcohol at Morrison's supermarket in Bolton. I'm 46 years old. I was drinking alcohol in the 1970s. Well, are you blaming me? Are you bragging? What is it? It's hard to know. And Keith says, getting around the wearing of motorbike helmets was just a wind-up by the turban-wearing community. You don't see turbans being worn on the sports field, hairs tied back in a knot. Some of the best hockey players in the world are Sikhs. You don't see turbans on building sites, the hair's tied back in a knot to fit under the safety helmet. The authorities succumbed to the Religious Emancipation Brigade. That's Keith in Blackpool. Yeah, but there is the turban in a police uniform. There's now a turban uniform, isn't there? Yeah. Oh, listen to this. People in Bury have easier access to an NHS dentist than anywhere in Greater Manchester. Yeah. The town is ranked 3rd best in the North West. The Chief Executive of Bury Primary Care Trust, Stephen Mills, said, "This is a great achievement and is a testament to the level of commitment of local dentists and the investment that's gone into NHS dental services over the last few years. We believe it's extremely important for the people of Bury to be able to continue to access NHS dentists whenever they need treatment. And these figures offer great encouragement. So there you have. If you need a dentist, send your teeth to Bury. It's the only way. Well, you can't you, these days? You can send them, it'll be all right. Oh, hey, did you see... You know all this talk about the congestion charge? Well, there's a story in the Metro today that I think counts as a vote in favour. Now, that's not to say I'm making a judgment, but a vote in favour. That's all I'm saying. It counts as a vote in favour. And it's a report from London. Now, London, as you know, has had a congestion charge for some time now. Quite some time. And it's had an effect. First of all, there was the effect that people began to use buses more. More people began to use buses, and people who use them more. And people who use the underground more. They did. They used public transport more. And the number of vehicles per hour passing any given point diminished. Now, the Tories in the... Well, we can say that because it doesn't matter because it's London, but the Tories in the campaign for the mayoralship said that the benefits of the congestion charge have now diminished to almost zero. So that, yes, there was a reduction in cars at first, in the number of cars at first, but they're now back to pre-congestion charge levels. They may be right, they may be wrong, I don't know. And frankly, it's London, so really, I don't care. But there's a story in the paper about the congestion, the effects of the congestion charge, and that is that the congestion charge has meant that parking charges in London have diminished. Yeah, parking charges in London have gone down. And the argument is that fewer people are going into town, and whereas previously they would charge you a hell of a lot of money to park all day, there are now actually empty parking spaces in the car parks in London, and so they have had to reduce the charge just to stay in business. Yeah. Because if they don't, they'll be completely empty. And, of course, there's no money to be made in that. So that's a consequence of the congestion charge. If fewer people are seeking parking spaces, even now, after all this time, then it can only be argued that fewer people are driving into the city. Now, you make your own judgment as to whether that's a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly an effect. Terry in Rochdale. Hiya, Terry.
Hi, Alan. Yeah, you're talking about these people, age limits for buying alcohol and people buying it for them. There was a case in the paper, my daughter sent it, she lives abroad actually, she cut it out and sent it to me, with a Father's Day card, and she said, it was a couple, and the guy was on holiday with his sister, or gone visiting his sister, and while they were out, he said, I'm just picking a few bits up. He says, I'll come with you. So they go to Tesco's, right? And they buy, not a full shop, just maybe 20 or 30 quid or whatever on bits and pieces. And when they got to the till, everything was going through. And the girl then stopped, said, have you got any ID? She says, ID? I don't know what you mean. She says, well, what do you want ID for? I'm just buying groceries. She says, I need evidence of your age. She says, because of this. She says, Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce. I don't know what you mean. She said, you haven't read it, have you? I don't need to read it. I use it regularly. She said, what are you telling me? She said, well, it contains 2% alcohol. And I'm not serving you if you can't prove age. And the brother said, look, he says, I'm 35. I've got my passport with me. He said, and I can prove my age, so I'll buy it. She said, no, you won't. I'm not serving you either, because when you get outside, you'll only give it to her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're buying it for somebody underage.
Oh, gee, mate. Can't believe you talking about PC.
I know, but I thought 2% was acceptable. I remember years ago, you remember when you used to buy shandy as a kid, but it was tinned shandy and bottled shandy.
Yeah, I remember.
It used to say on there, guaranteed not more than 2. It used to be degrees in those days, but I think that's the same as percentage. I could be wrong, but it used to say guaranteed no more than 2 degrees proof, which meant it was below the regulation limit. So I suspect you'd have to get through an awful lot of barbecue sauce before you were looking for someone to fight, wouldn't you?
I wonder who told her about it, the shop assistant.
Probably the manager. Extraordinary. I mean, if you ate enough barbecued sauce on its own with the intention of getting drunk, you'd spend an awful lot of time in the bog the next day, wouldn't you?
You need about 100 cans. Can I just say something about this job where you don't need any intelligence?
Go on.
Yeah. Chief Executive of Rochdale Council.
Oh, dear. And remember, I didn't say intelligence, I said education.
Oh, education.
Well, you'd be able to be the Chief Executive, would you?
Well,
all right.
You've got about 20 or 30 people in the town centre last week and about 6 vehicles sweeping up, and there was nothing there to sweep. And you have half the drains in Rochdale are blocked, and the place is continually getting flooded. And they've had lots of money from various sources. And when you ask them, when are you going to start spending this money on the drains? Oh, we farmed it out to Wimpy. And when you ring Wimpy, they don't know all about it.
Yeah,
so,
and what's an hamburger chain doing cleaning the streets? Good on you, Terry. 0161 228 2255. He sent me that again. I don't know why he sent me that again, but thank you for it, Tony. I liked it the first time. And Marion says, I think the gentleman who said that fines should reflect your income was on to a winner. Should I end up with such fine, I'd be entitled to a rebate. So, you've been found speeding. How much do you earn? I'm on the retirement pension. Right, here's a tenner. Don't do it again. Yes, I can see that working. I was told by a private landlord that there is legislation either out or pending that stops him fitting lever-type deadlocks to the door on any property he leases. This would be on house front and back doors, or in the case of a house of multiple occupancy, individual doors to flats or bedsits. It could also include window locks. This is because there have been cases where the occupants can't find the key in an emergency, such as a fire, and have been stuck inside. Only Yale-type locks can be used, where you only need the key to get in. You don't need a key to get out, in other words. Perhaps some of these thickos you were on about are renting these properties. I can see... I can't see the sense in it, but I can see what they mean. Yes. You're not allowed to put deadlocks on your doors. But would that mean that people who rent the properties wouldn't be able to change those locks either? Because, of course, if you don't have deadlocks, sometimes insurance companies up your premium, or alternatively give you a discount if you do have them. Barry in Offerton says, Alan, if you do the step with carnation, it'll be white. It's condensed milk. It'll be black inside a fortnight. I think you mean cardinal red. The tin had a picture of a cardinal on it. I had to do it on Fridays as a boy at me granny's. Why Fridays, Barry? Was it a little something for the weekend? Was that the theory? Yeah, why did they only clean the step on Friday? It was, what was the... Well, we're not going to get into the donkey stone stories. I can very much live the rest of my life without getting any discussion about donkey stones. All right. Whether they're for scrubbing the step or whether they're hanging off the donkey, I have no interest in them whatsoever. I just thought I'd get that out of the way before we ended up in a strange place. Well, you can. Well, you just... No. You see, if you're not careful, it degenerates. Terry says, oh, these are posh things on the menu. Cremon glaze. That's custard, apparently. Is it? I've never heard it called that, but never mind. Custard. Crushed potatoes. That's mash. Well, it's not, you see. It's not. Mash is a paste, for want of a better term, and crushed is little pieces of potato. Yeah. But never mind. Sautéed, fried. That might be true. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just trying to think. No, I think you're right. No, it's true. You spelt it wrong, by the way. Red wine juice, sauce. Yeah. But again, sauce could include a flour and water with a bit added and all that, whereas juice means it's just runny, you know. Like consomme is soup without bits thing. Yeah. No, I don't care, obviously. Why would I? Why do people buy beer in supermarkets, you may ask? The following was taken from an article in The Guardian back in March. A £10 multi-pack of various brand beers in supermarkets are on special offer at 2 for £16. The offer equates to 58p a pint on some brands. By contrast, the average price of a pint of beer sold in a pub last year was £2.64. That's some difference. Well, yes, but where's the pleasure in sitting at home drinking booze? I'm not a fan of pubs. I don't really like pubs. I don't enjoy pubs. But surely the thing about a pub is you get there with your friends or even your enemies, and you sit there and you have a bit of a chat, you have a bit of a laugh, you have a bit of a joke. I mean, my dad likes going to the club. He goes to the Legion in Blackpool a lot. And when I say a lot, I don't just turned my dad into an alky. No, my dad goes to the Legion. He used to go to the Labour Club in Warrington. He likes going out to the drinking establishment. He's not a pubs man, but he likes going to clubs, and he sits there with his mates and they have a bit of crack and they insult one another and take the mickey out of one another. And the drinking's just part of it. But he wouldn't sit at home having a drink, because it's not the drink that you go for, it's the company. It's you know, the company you're in. I don't just mean you're lonely. It's spending time with your friends. That's what it's about, surely, if it's about anything. If all the pub is a place where you can go and drink alcohol, then it's a crap pub, or you're an idiot, isn't it? Yes, you're right. If all you're going to do is sit on the stool at the bar and drink on your own because you're a miserable get, then yeah, we'd all like you to stop at home and drink at home, and you'll save money, and you won't be some stupid ass cluttering up the bar at the pub. That's fine. But if pubs have anything to offer, it's the bonhomie, it's the company, it's the friendship, it's the relationship with others, isn't it? One of the reasons I don't bloody like them.
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
Cheshire's top policeman supporting proposals to introduce a ban on sales of alcohol to the under-21s. The move's being proposed by the Scottish Government, but Peter Fahey says he'd like to see it introduced in England too. The predatory rapist from Stretford has been jailed indefinitely. David O'Dare, who's 30 and from Ripon Road, was convicted of raping a 20-year-old barmaid in 2007. And fresh talks are being held to try and end the strike by tanker drivers delivering for Shell, which began last Friday. Manchester's weather, sunny spells and showers today, highs of 17 Celsius. I'm Alexia O'Connor.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, I'm just taking a quick look to the cameras along the M602 heading in and outbound around Junction 3 Regent Road. And again, everything fairly quiet. And no reported delays on the M62 from Junction 12 out towards Junction 8 at Burtonwood Road. Both east and westbound traffic coping fairly well. M66 traffic very quiet for the moment. A nice steady trickle of traffic from Junction 4 all the way up towards Edenfield on the A56 where the bypass is. And no reported problems either on the M60. The Ring Road, all moving freely for now. Don't forget, if you can update me though, do get in touch. Make sure that it's hands-free before you dial. The number you need is 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Good afternoon. Manchester United's quest for a third successive Premier League title begins at home to Newcastle on August the 16th, whilst Manchester City start their campaign at Aston Villa. Bolton take on one of the promoted clubs, whilst Wigan head to London. With news of next season's Premier League fixtures, here's Mark Elliott.
United's title credentials will get an early test as they face Liverpool and Chelsea away in the space of 8 days in September. Mark Hughes' first home game in charge of City will be a week after that opener at Villa against West Ham. Manchester's Big Two don't meet at Old Trafford until the second week in May, with the Eastlands derby scheduled for November the 29th. The Bolton boss Gary Megson faces a former club on the opening day as promoted Stoke visit the Reebok Stadium, while Wigan start at West Ham. The Premier League doesn't finish until May the 24th, with the FA Cup final being staged on May the 30th.
Well, Stockport's opening game back in League One is away at Huddersfield on August the 9th, with relegated Leicester the first visitors to Edgeley Park. Oldham start at home to Millwall. In League Two, the opening day's fixtures see Rochdale go to Grimsby, Bury host Brentford and Macclesfield visit Shrewsbury. You can see the fixtures in full by visiting bbc.co.uk/Manchester. UEFA are having to replace the pitch in Basel in time for Thursday's quarter-final at Euro 2008. After a downpour threatened the game between Switzerland and Turkey last week, a decision was made to install new turf. At Euro 2008 later on this evening, Germany play Austria, needing a point to qualify from Group B. Austria must win in Vienna to stand any chance of progress. In Klagenfurt, Croatia, who are already through, face a Poland side that also need to win to be in with a chance of qualifying. Paul Dickoff may be about to join the David Beckham-inspired Major League Soccer revolution. Dickoff, who is out of contract at Manchester City, wants to stay at Eastlands, but there's interest from the MLS sides Toronto and New York Red Bulls. Leeds forward Jamie Peacock has been appointed captain for England for their one-off international against France next week. Salford head coach Sean McRae believes fullback John Wilshere will play a key part in the final of the Northern Rail Cup against Doncaster. Wilshere scored 20 points during the win over the Celtic Crusaders on Saturday.
In many respects, he was a difference between the two sides. There probably were other things there as well. Now, I thought we had some great defence at different times when we needed to, but I thought Johnny was a real safe custodial role, and his return into the football was tremendous, and plus his goal kicking. I don't think he missed a goal.
Wigan's players could find themselves having to work a little harder in training this week. Coach Brian Noble has been critical of them following the weekend defeat at Catalan.
Frustrating, this one. Not tough, frustrating. We seem to be taking a step forward and a couple back now and again, and we can't afford to do that in relation to our consistency. So we're going to have to speak to people who I think are not consistent and say, well, you need to pull your socks up, mate.
There's been an injury blow for England on their rugby union tour of New Zealand. Prop Andrew Sheridan will miss Saturday's second test in Christchurch with a gashed left eye. And Tiger Woods is hoping to win the 14th major golf title of his career today at Torrey Pines in California. An 18th hole birdie from the rough allowed the world number one to tie Rocco Mediate's score and force a playoff at the US Open. That playoff begins at around 5 o'clock UK time.
I think you've done it, Delith. I'm very pleased you've achieved the impossible. I think you've got me marginally interested in football. I think I might even go to the game. Because if they replace the pitch with Basel, it'll smell lovely, won't it? I'm really looking forward to it.
Celebrating 60 years of the computer.
Love them, love them, love them. I don't know where I would be without them. When I was a teenager, my dad bought, the Sinclair ZX, whatever it was. What do you do with one RAM or 1K RAM? I remember that tennis game, the boop, 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 boop. And we thought, that's it. This is technology at its very finest. It won't go any further than this. It can't. I don't think there is a downside. I think as long as you're sensible and as long as you've got your head screwed on right, and as long as you're a normal functioning human being with friends and a sex life, a computer holds no fear for you.
Celebrating 60 years of the computer. Invented here in Manchester. This Friday at BBC Radio Manchester.
What do you do with one RAM? You lean it on the back of a U, that's what you do.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
If you end up doing anything else with a RAM, then at least you won't be spending money on lipstick. 0161 228. Think about it. Well, perhaps not. 228 2255 or Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk or you can text on 07786 206 951. Another pretentious load of cobblers from Foodies is drizzled. The correct word is poured. Peter in Oldham. Absolutely. But who cares how it got on there? It really doesn't matter, does it? Whether you poured it on, or you drizzled it on, or whether you splashed it on, except then you'll have to sit next to Henry Cooper. No, it's an old ad. Yeah. It doesn't matter, does it? And why do they put it on anyway? I hate that. You go in... I was in a restaurant on Saturday night, and I asked for a green salad. And it came back. Well, it didn't come back. It hadn't been before. But it came, and it had a bit of lettuce, and then onion, not green, I've never seen a green onion. I played the record once or twice. It was very good. Yeah, green onions, very good. And so I've never seen a green onion, really, but it had onion in it. It's had radish in it. Now, they're not green, they're red. Tomatoes, yeah, no, you can get green tomatoes, but they're not so good unless you fry them on a, I don't know, on a platter near a railway station in America. I saw that film as well. Yeah, but they were red. There was nothing green in it except about 4 pieces of lettuce. It's weird. A green salad, that's like green stuff, isn't it? It'd have been better off with peas in it. I wouldn't have had a complaint then. It's got peas in it. What do you want? They're green. Peas are green. I know the gag. Exactly. It's the whole thing. Restaurants have forgotten why they're there. They're there to sell the food that we want to us. They want our money. We want food. I don't want to be educated into the ways of the restaurant. I don't want to be educated into the mind of the chef. I don't. I want the chef to cook what I want. Now, if he or she, because there are girls at it, but if he or she decides that they want to invent a dish, well, there's not much invention goes on it, really. They just jumble up the ingredients in a different way and then say, we call this blah. Well, that's fine. But I want to know what blah is. I watch all them cookery programmes on the telly, and frankly, it's rare indeed, that I see something on it and think, do you know what, I'd like to eat that. I'd like to eat it, because they just mess about. Why don't you just leave it alone? If it's good stuff, it'll taste all right, instead of buggering about with it and giving it fancy names. Well, 0161 228 2255. You've got something to say, get it off your chest. There's a story in one of the papers today where an expert, now, I don't know what one of them is, I really don't, unless it's talking crap, and then it's me. An expert says, how often have you read that? An expert says. It's a fantastic way of covering your back on a story. Nothing to do with me, I never said it, no, it was the expert. Which expert? I don't know, what was he an expert of? I've no idea. But an expert says that family numbers should be limited. Yeah, family numbers should be limited. Well, that's not quite what he says. He says that people who cannot financially support their children without government help shouldn't have them. Now, on the face of it, that sounds like an eminently sensible policy. Oh, yeah, dead right. Look, if you've got 47 kids, that isn't my fault. Why should I pay for them? So that's easy. But the trouble is, they don't all arrive at once, for a start. And you might well have a good job when you're having them. You know, there you are, you're fully employed, you've got a reasonable job, life's going according to plan, so you end up with 4 kids. Now, I know the job, doesn't cause the kids. I do know what causes it. Please don't send me pictures. I don't think the pictures will get through. No, I'm not saying that, because you'll try. No, don't send me pictures. But I know how they're made. I know how children happen. Unless it's that test tube rubbish, with the lesbians out on a turkey baster and all that. Unless it's that. Well, fine. But I know how they get here. I know where they come from, more or less. I know what you have to do to make them. But I also know that it's kind of a long-term project, isn't it? They're born, and they're your children until you die. Yeah, they're your children. If they die, they're still your children, but only in memory. So it's a long-term project. So there you are, you've got 4 kids, 15, 14, 13 and 12. You had them all when you had a decent job with a few bob coming in, and you lose your job through no fault of yours. Another nasty, evil, money-grubbing fascist dictator in some foreign land decides that we're not going to sell that stuff in that country anymore or whatever, and we're shutting the shops because my bonus has gone down to less than 10 million, so screw the working class. And you lose your job. Now, what are we to say to that person? You should have put a balloon on it 15 years ago. 14 years ago, 13 years ago, and 12. You should have ballooned it rather than having the kids. You can't expect people to make lifelong decisions. Or are we really suggesting that our society should be a bit like the Chinese and say you're only allowed a fixed number. Now, in China, it's 1, which means, of course, they drown all the girls. It's a bit like the puppy. No, it is. It's a bit like having kittens, you know. No, you know what it was like. I don't know whether it was in your day, but it was when I was a child. The cats... Ma'am! We never had a cat when I was little, so I'm in the clear. Ma'am, the cats had kittens. Right, which one do you want? Because the other 6 are going in the bucket. Is it going to be like that? Because that's what happens in China. That's what happens in parts of India. What, you've had a girl? You don't want a girl? Get it drowned. And they're gone. That happens. Don't look at me. I don't do it. I'm not advocating it. I'm not saying it's a fantastic idea. I can see the merit sometimes. It's not a fantastic idea, but it happens. Because the Chinese say you're only allowed 1 kid. Chinese parents prefer a son because he's likely to make money for the rest of his life and feed you and clothe you when you're hungry. So you don't want a girl. So you drown it so you can have another bash at it. Exactly. So that's what you get. But is that what we want here? No. Exactly. But that's the consequence of limiting the number of children. Yes, we can encourage people. Usually the people at the forefront of such encouragement, you know, Spike Milligan, 4 kids, Duke of Edinburgh, 4 kids. They all said you shouldn't have more than 2 children. They got 4 apiece. Yeah? Usually they're at the forefront of it, but it's just wrong, isn't it? Yes, we should say to people, look, you ought not to have loads and loads of children. But if you do have loads and loads of children and fall on hard times, doesn't it fall upon us, the rest of society, to say, your needs are greater than those of a family of 3, so we will give you more to satisfy those needs? Isn't that how we should do it? Isn't that what the welfare state was all about? Isn't that why it was created all those years ago? It wasn't created to say, let's keep taxes down. Taxes were a lot lower before the welfare state. The whole point of taxes is to make sure that there's some kind of support network for those who have difficulty. So the idea of limiting the number of children by benefit, in other words, well, you've had 4, but we're only feeding 2, how can that be right? It can't, can it? It can't be right. Karen says that their bin, they only put their bin out every 6 weeks. She does. I'm not making it up. Why do people bleat on about about it being a health hazard if their bin isn't collected every week? We only put our bin out once every 6 weeks, and even then it's nowhere near full. If someone's bin is overflowing with waste food, then they need to buy less, put less on their plate, and waste less. If their recycling bin is overflowing with packaging, then either leave unnecessary packaging at the checkout or buy things which aren't packed. Despite what the sheeple thing, it is very easy to do. However, some people find whining and making excuses even easier. That's from Karen. I used to know a Canadian woman who did that at the checkout. She unpacked everything, and all she took home in her reusable bag, as we used to call shopping bags, so as we now call shopping bags, all she took home was the product inside. She used to unwrap the lot at the checkout, much to the exasperation of the checkout staff, and indeed to the people behind her in the queue. But it did the trick for her. Maybe it worked for us all. How come... I don't understand this. How come when you open a tin of evaporated milk, it's always full? Dave. How come when you open a tin of evaporated milk, it's always full? I don't understand the question. Why would it not be full if you're only just opening it? That's bizarre. You need help. What do you mean, how come when you open it, it's always full? It's meant to full. It's meant to be full. Ludicrous. And if your idea is, as somebody just whispered, that it hasn't evaporated, it can't evaporate when it's in a tin. Oh, I don't know. I don't understand some gags. Well, I do, they're just not funny. Mind you, I use a lot of them myself. And why not? I phoned my ISP today to cancel my contract so I could reapply as a new customer and get the cheaper rate. But I was told if I did, I'd still be classed as an existing customer. Is this true? If I terminate my contract, I no longer have anything to do with the ISP, do I? Vinny in Ordale, which I take to be Rochdale. How long does it take you to type OCH, for God's sake? Vinny in Ardale. And he's even put a full stop between the R and the D. So it's only 2 more symbols. You know, R.Dale, unless there's a town out there, maybe that's your name. Oh, that's what it is. Maybe you're Vinny Ardale. But it seems strange to use your middle initial when you've truncated your name anyway. So no, I think it's an abbreviation of Rochdale, and thus saving himself 2 symbols. It's not Morse code, mate. It's not hard. Anyway, I think they're right. I don't think they're right in principle. I think they're right in what they say. But frankly, that's good enough for me. Oh, dear. I don't know. What a thing to whine about. I want to leave and come back so I can have the discount. Yeah, right. Well, good luck with that. I'll be back tomorrow. I will, honest. No, I'm coming back tomorrow. Might as well. Didn't out today. I'll do it again tomorrow. Ta-da now.
Take one portion of bickering,
a couple of mild disagreements,
a look that could strip wallpaper,